So hi and welcome after lunch, or welcome back. So it's a pleasure for me to welcome you to this panel with perspectives on the impact of new technology on people, with perspectives from around the world, from the United States with Nicole Speight-James, South America with Natalia Quintas, Europe, Giada Gerotto, Africa with Joan Boza, and Asia with Luz Sanchez. So here is the stage to you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you to all of you for being here. It's my first presentation in English, so be patient with me. I'm going to take it off. Okay. So let's begin. We're here today. Your moderators we are going to be Nicole Speight-James, Director of People Operations at AdvanPage, and myself, Natalia Quintas, Chief People Officer at Terra Translations. But we have here three professionals with a solid experience in the industry leading teams: Giada Gerotto, Customer Excellence Manager at Creative Words; Johan Botha, Director at Folio Online and founder of the Association of Language Companies in Africa; and Luz Sanchez, Chief Marketing Officer at Master Translation and Multilingual Technologies. But we are not alone. The AI is here as well, and how we deal with it in our teams is what we are going to discuss over the next hour. We are representatives of medium-sized companies, and we want to share some ideas and strategies that we are developing to go around the challenges that these new technologies are represented for our teams. So first, we're going to ask you to scan the QR code and let us know, how would you describe your current sentiment toward the localization industry? Please take a moment to reflect and be honest about that. We need some music for that moment, Alejandro, to wait. Yes, they are appearing. Uncertainty, terrifier. Oh, interesting. Innovation, interesting, good. I like good. Oh, look at that. Uncertainty in the most common one. Love. Who loves the AI here? Who is the lover? Please raise your hand. Exciting and scary at the same time. I think that it's interesting. Passion. Oh. There are Latin Americas in the room, right? Yeah. Okay, you are still writing? No, that's it. Okay, here you have the cloud. Interesting words.
Yeah, so these are really interesting, and I'm glad you're all here if you're uncertain, because that's what we hope to address with you all today. Amidst I think the prevailing question that we're trying to ask everyone is, are you ready to embrace change, or will you succumb to your fears? So I think because you're all here, you have some capacity to, or some interest, right, in embracing AI's changes, but how do we do that for our people? More importantly, within our organizations, obviously we're learning a lot about the context of the industry and the changes that are happening. But really at the core, how are you going to support your people through it, your management processes, and what are the unique cultural dynamics of your team that we need to consider? So we have this really interesting graph from CSA Research, which points out a couple key highlights and can perhaps give us some, pacify our fears a bit. Because one of the great things is that translation and localization companies have been in the area of AI since its nascent stages, right? With early rule-based rudimentary systems to now the more evolutionary neural machine translations. Human expertise has been at the forefront, right? I mean, you all know the value of your linguists, of your translators, of the people that are building out your systems, that are testing, right, that are helping make your AI technologies error-prone. So the human experience is there. So we do have this scary line, right, that says that there is a peak localization. And that's what we're going to address too, is the fears, because when I see that, I think, well, what's coming next, right? And how do you prepare your people for that? So why do your people matter? Well, this McKinsey study, which was put out in 2023, surveyed 1,600 US participants. And one of the things that it asked is, what are the impacts that you're seeing within your industries, within your roles today? And it highlights to us that while data processing and a lot of data-related jobs are being most impacted, there's still a great need for supporting your teams and your people around things like management, stakeholder interactions, and applying expertise. So how many of you here have, roles that are requiring you to do those three processes? I'm sure most of you and most of your interactions are around that. So you're probably thinking, well, how do I prepare my teams? It seems like I'm going to have to, hire great people. Maybe that means that they need flashy new titles like Tech Genie or AI implementer. Well, really what the people are looking for that are already ready to go and not fearing AI is actually more supportive communities, great managers, meaningful work. And that's all the things that we hope to share with you, some insights on how to build out. So you can see here, right? It's not what you would expect. You're not going to have to hire flashy data talent, but you will have to look for, how can I make my organization more well-balanced?
We know that despite you put that you love the AI, as humans, we have the same fundamental fears. For example, we feel confusion whether in what is going to happen the next year with the AI, how it's going to impact in our job. It is going to replace us on maybe some of our task, and what are we going to do with that? We can experiment some kind of anxiety about thinking about if our teams are prepared for that. So regarding our personal experience with changes or with technology itself, we can have different questions and concerns about what is going to happen in the next year. And as we represent different cultures, we'll try to talk about that today. If there are some uniqueness or some differentiators in how we manage these changes in the different regions of the world. So let's begin with the US. Nikki, what do you think about that?
Yeah, so when I was trying to do some research, what I found was an interesting study from the American Psychological Association. And it surveyed, I think, a sampling of around 7,000 US workers. And it was asking about the American psyche around AI implementation. And one of the things I found the most interesting was that for people that have any level of resistance or fear, and usually these are the same people that concurrently had apprehension towards change, they are really suffering. So for your staff that is uncertain, they are experiencing heightened levels of stress, emotional distress even, overwork. They are the people that are less likely to advance in your companies and the people that are more likely to look outside of your current company to find a job where they feel like there's a heightened sense of stability. So when I asked my organization, I found more of a balanced kind of approach, and I think that's what you might find. At least I polled some other US companies, and it seems like there is an excitement because there's a lot of usefulness around these tools and people are starting to experiment and see that. But also there's a skepticism, right? What is the integrity of our work going to mean now? How are we going to ensure ethics, equality, right? There's biases we have to consider. And so whenever there's an uncertainty, it breeds more uncertainty. So while it might not be just a blanket, we're not happy with AI or we're really scared, that small grain of uncertainty is enough for me to say, let's dive deeper. So that's what we're doing. We're creating an AI task force, and we'll talk a little bit more about the solutions later.
Okay, when we talk about Latin America, we can find different realities in each country. You can see here the survey, for example, made by Ipsos. And we can ignore that in Latin America we are living different difficult times regarding to the social and political questions, and it's different in each country. We can't like talk about Latin America in general. But the society is partially supporting the idea of implementing AI in the workforce. But luckily in our industry, it's improving year after year because of the needs of the industry itself. But if we see the other graphic, the one survey made by Boomerang, it's a portal specialized in human resources, they say that the majority of the people express burnout nowadays in their jobs. And they say that the most important factors that are affecting them are the lack of clarity regarding the role, and it makes sense because technology is changing everything in our daily work, the work overload, but this is important, the treatment by superiors or the behaviors of their leaders. So when I read this, I wonder, what are we doing as leaders in our organization to promote a safe environment where the people can feel comfortable, have the time in their daily work to prove new technologies, to look for new solutions. And if we promote the confidence in them to make mistakes and that everything is okay, we are always in a rush, project by project, after project, all day long, but we need to be sure that we are providing the right conditions for the people to embrace the technology. What about Europe, Yara? It's your turn.
Okay, thank you very much. So the data I took for Europe are coming from the ELS survey, the European Language Industry survey that's run every year. And this one was published, I think it was January, February 2024. So I don't know how many of you know that survey, but it basically goes across all different stakeholders involved in our industry. So it has freelancers, it has LSCs, it has academia, and buy side. So it's quite encompassing. And there were two different areas that I chose to focus on. One is LSCs and the other one is freelancers. So I'm sorry for not including buyers if there are any in this room, but I'm a bit far away from that side of the industry, so I wouldn't feel like commenting on that. But I found, I'll focus on the overall view first, because the survey delivers some data that are related to the big picture. And there was a title, one of the title of the different sections that really stuck with me, and that was Industry Sentiment, Not in the Mood. And I thought that was quite telling. And then you go through the data, and then it speaks about zero or no growth, or a shrink in revenue for our concerns 2023, and extremely cautious expectations, and I'm quoting again, for 2024. Which is nice in the end, if you think of that, because we're still keeping some sort of low optimism in saying, okay, yeah, we're not going to die yet. LSCs, you have the data in the graph that I hope you can read better than I can do on Natalia's computer. But basically, you'll see price pressure is circled with a red line, red circle. And what surprised me of that is that it is much higher than the challenge of implementing new technology. So what we seem to be worried about is not, oh no, there's a new technology, what are we going to do with this? But as, oh no, there's a new technology, am I still going to make enough money? And that's maybe one point for reflection, like it's food for thought, because it's telling us how we are trying to face this situation. Perhaps technology could ultimately bring higher revenue for two different reasons. One is the same we've witnessed with Neural MT, right? So cost went down, but the request for our services increased exponentially. And second, because we might change the pattern and start using technology to redistribute that fare of money more equally throughout the entire supply chain. Sorry, I have this bad cold. And then second is the one for freelancers, moving on to the stress factors. And then price, again, is a big thing. Economic climate is a problem. And then, the rise of technology is there, and it's quite of a pressing stress factor. And this year, they added cost of living. And that's quite a serious thing we should start taking into account. So maybe it's because of my vendor management background, but I like to point the finger towards that problem. And I'm not at all for pampering translators in this endless complaining attitude that we sometimes have the feeling they have, that it's like, it's all on me, we are the last ring of the chain and all that, not at all. But it's always worth thinking from the LSP side and ultimately from the buy side as well, of what we are doing and taking our own responsibilities for the entire supply chain. And that's it.
That's it. Let's continue with Johan.
I think in this panel, I'm sort of always going to be the devil's advocate. It's not as rosy and fabulous that you might think every way. But I think it's important to have that perspective. So what I've been dealing with and seeing is much that scared, freaky out in the Slido poll. Because we've seen many African languages have gone through the NMT 20 years ago or so, and it's still not right. It doesn't do it, it's on, and now we're on. And interesting enough, regarding price is the price in Europe and America goes down because NMT works, but then the expectation is, okay, in African languages, it must also work, so the price must also come down. And it doesn't work like that. So and then the thing for AI is everyone sees that AI can then do the machine translation and even the quality control and so on, but it can't do the machine translation, so it can't do the quality control, and it's a mess and so on. So those are the fears. And the other one is seeing the promise. So some people are very, very encouraged by things saving sort of extinct languages, some of those things, but there's not enough data to actually get to what they can see is happening, because most of the data that these things are trained on is European data and American data and so on. And then one that's really important is financial burden that people don't think about. You have to have, and I mean it comes from CAT tools already. The financial burden of having access to a lot of things and then having an always-on internet connection and so on. So now the added benefit burden is that you need to buy tokens, and if you want to create an image or whatever, you have to have high-speed internet, always on, and you do have to do training on how to do it, but you can't afford the training. So it's a completely different ball game in Africa than it is to the rest of the world. But I'm not going to try and do doom and gloom the whole time. There is solutions, or there are solutions.
And now Asia, the optimistic Asia.
Thank you. Well, I am not Asian, I'm European, but I've been in China for a long time. And so before preparing for this, to answer this question, what are the fears in Asia, I took 1 day to think about it. Took 2 days, 3 days. I couldn't come up with any fears. Of course, I assumed, well, perhaps my colleagues also fear losing their jobs. But I thought, let me ask them. So I carried out a survey within our team in China, and I also asked some connections in Korea and Japan. And well, they confirmed what I thought. They are not afraid of AI, and they are very excited actually about the new solutions, the new applications of AI in our industry. And something that surprised me, because I thought in general Chinese mindset, well, Chinese corporate world is quite hierarchical. If from the top it comes the idea that you have to use this tool, everyone learns and they will not complain. That's what I observed. So I thought my colleagues would be willing to learn from the company, from the trainings, but they surprised me saying, no, we started learning on our own before this came from above. We are really genuinely interested in all the solutions. So yeah, that's my what I can say about my colleagues in China, that they have the open-mindedness, the mindset, and there is the infrastructure, the high-speed connection, and all the software and hardware ready for it. So this is my little.
Now let's share a video about Asia, about China, right?
Oh yeah.
We're going to see Luz here.
Okay. Play with your hand.
From here. No, play with your hand.
That's the best part of the video. Yeah.
So last February, I was in China for the Chinese New Year, and I visited my friend in Guangzhou. He's also non-Chinese, but he showed me this. Look, now you can just scan your fingerprint, your hand on the convenience store to pay for whatever. I said, no way, come on, it's not going to work for foreigners. Like, it's probably, no, it worked. You saw that, and that was my face. I didn't plan of preparing this for Gala. This is a real situation. So that is just to show how, I thought in Spain, at least, this would be unthinkable. People would be like, no, why would I give the convenience store my fingerprint for that? That's my personal data. There is a lot of privacy issues. Well, as you can see in China, nobody is afraid of that. Convenience is on top of everything. So that applies also to AI and all the embracing all the new things coming. Yeah.
Well, that's great. Well, as you see, there are different perspectives of how we are living the introduction of AI in our works. But it's important that to recognize that we only can facing our fears. We have nothing to do. We have to learn from Asia, right? A little bit. And luckily, we have like HR solutions or strategies to be stronger in this moment. So that's what are we going to discuss in the panel right now. But first, another pool.
Yeah, so first we want to ask you the question, what are the leadership challenges your company is facing regarding AI implementation? And there's some options for you to choose from. I wish I could see what my team members are selecting.
It's changing.
Okay, very interesting. Yeah, so it seems like we have a three-way tie for the most important or most challenging situations you guys are facing. So alignment among teams to achieve tech goals, and now it's kicked up, so, and clear internal communications about strategic decisions. So great, we have some antidotes for that. So now we're going to move on to the panel discussion section where we are going to cover these 4 topics here. And I'm going to start off with leadership challenges and opportunities. So if you want to change the slide. My first question is for Giada. So Giada, what specific development opportunities should organizations prioritize to equip their leaders with the skills and mindset needed to guide their teams through AI adoption?
I wish I had an answer to this question, you know. Probably, at least my feeling is that every company is quite unique. So perhaps the answer I would feel like giving and what's been also a bit our experience within Creative Words, we are medium-sized LSP as many of us in this room, has been asking questions, asking people, and trying to bring up the issues. And my personal vibe on that is that maybe it's a bit early. Maybe people don't really know how they are feeling about things. And it's very difficult to find solutions to problems that do not have a name yet. So definitely well, when we were seeing the slide earlier on, there was the answer about strategic, unclear communication regarding the strategy. And maybe that's something that we are witnessing, probably because the strategy is also not clear. I've heard comments here in Gala from people saying, yes, the whole conversation about AI is very interesting, but there's no solution. I'm not learning how to do things, and we all tend to expect this sort of turnkey solution to problems, but there's none, and especially when it involves people. So I think communication, like clear communication, and more than that, really listening to people's challenges. And also understanding the direction you want to go to, not in the sense of what am I going to do with AI or how am I implementing technology, none of this, but in terms of setting your goals, in terms of supporting your people. Yesterday, I don't know if any of you were at the presentation by Nancy from Accolade that was about talent management. Mm-hmm. And I asked her a question. No, it wasn't me, actually. It was somebody else, but that was a very relatable question. And they said, to what extent do you push your people who are more change resistant? And she said, well, you communicate to them, you ask them what their challenges are, you try to involve them, and then if that doesn't work, you let them go. Like you need to understand when it's time to stop trying to drag people into change when they are change resistant. So these two things, I think, go together, listening and setting boundaries for yourself and allowing other people to set boundaries.
Thank you so much, Giada. Okay, my second question is for Johan. So Johan, what steps can leaders take to ensure that team members have the necessary training and resources to leverage AI effectively in their roles, and more specifically, regardless of their cultural background or perhaps their level of technical expertise?
Yeah, I had a chat with some of my people and around, and I sort of cultivated, and let it grow a bit, the idea of can I figure it out in sort of 2-3 steps. So the first step for me is don't assume anything. I was convinced my colleague, who is very tech savvy, is going to be my right-hand man to take this thing and work with it. And I went to her, and she said, she had that idea of if it works, why change it? It works for me. And she said she dabbled in a few things, but it was sort of a waste of her time. She went back to what she knew and it worked and it's quick and so on, she'll try it again in a couple of months. And something that I said to the people here, she sent me a cartoon as an attachment of the "if it ain't broke, don't fix it" shop. Advertising to fix unbroken things using the latest tech. And so the second step then is, so first, don't assume anything. The second step is then, if you can't get it right with your tech savvy colleague, work with what you have. You might have someone who's not technical at all, but is very keen to learn. And that might be your best sounding board to say to the other people, listen, I don't know anything, but I got it right and it works and this is what it can do and I'm excited and so on. And then the third one is tailored learning. So don't have sort of the top-down thing that you have to have this webinar and you have to have that thing. So your team might be, or not might be, is different. So some people might like webinars, some people might like a one-on-one course, some people might like a workshop, another one might like a book about it that they can read on their own. So companies should offer all of those variations and let the team or let your team choose what works best for them, the people.
So it sounds like listening is kind of at the core of what both of you said. And I'm kind of interested, Luz, from your perspective, listening, setting expectations, understanding boundaries, as Giada mentioned. From an Asian perspective, what would that look like for you?
Well, this is a great question because sometimes, in my experience with Chinese colleagues, they are not ready to voice their thoughts. So it's important to promote that. If they are not asking the question, if they are not showing openly how they feel, we have to ask maybe one by one. Because sometimes even for my survey, I asked in a group of a lot of people. And then I had to find a couple of colleagues who were reluctant to maybe answer in the group because they had a slightly different answer or something. So we have to observe, and as Johan mentioned, every person works differently. So maybe find a specific space for each colleague. It's a lot of work, but it's important to hear all the voices, I guess.
Yeah, worth it. It's like finding out communication directly from your people, right? Where are they at? Where do you need to go? So as leaders, I really liked this kind of circle graph that starts with your strategic vision, right? So again, it's the communication piece. What are you telling your people is important for your company, for your clients that you serve or your end user? And how are you going to disseminate that? By aligning it with your goals. Like most of us have goal setting systems in management or leadership. We're talking to people that are then disseminating that information, so making it tangible, right? Culture, I think it was mentioned that cultivating the space for it, right? To ask questions, to elicit feedback, like Luz mentioned, when it's not maybe culturally the norm, you know? And upskilling, as Johan mentioned, you know, first listening and understanding where your people are at. Custom solutions, as Johan mentioned, that's really important, right? Because somebody might learn with a book, whereas the rest of your staff would hate it if you gave them a book. That's homework, right? And then ultimately, change management is how we go through this cycle and how we lessen the impact on our people. So just one structure that helps us simplify. As leaders, how do we work through the challenges that are custom to your company's needs?
Okay, let's move to the other topic, empowering teams in an AI landscape. My first question is for Johan. Johan, please tell me, how can organizations empower their teams to embrace AI technologies as tools for enhancing efficiency and productivity rather than as threats to job security? What do you think?
Yeah, as I said, I'm going to try to be sort of the devil's advocate in this. Empowering is sometimes not saying, do this. Sometimes empowering can take many forms, but empowering might be to step back, to calm down, to say, listening to your people and say, tech changes sort of at lightning speed, but people are a little bit slow to change. So standing, backing off. And as an example, I'm currently teaching my 3-year-old to ride a bike. And she sort of gets it right, and then she falls and scrapes her knee or what, and then she hates it and throws the bike there and her helmet, throws it there. And I have to realize, if I tell her, listen, get on, it's going to be all right, just do it, I might do more damage. And then give it 2 days, 3 days, and then say to her, okay, let's sort of try it again. Because organizations, leaders, parents see the potential. I see her riding a bike, going on with her friends, having the way that she can travel to school on her own, the confidence to do something. Winning gold medals at the Olympics is then an option. But I think stepping back and sort of seeing what and on the other side, it might be difficult as well, because sometimes you have to also push people a little bit, because you can't step back the whole time and everyone will then just see, I'm not gonna, why? You're not pushing me, there's no reason, you're giving me my freedom so I can just go do my own thing. So sometimes it's a difficult balance.
Would you like to add something, Luz, about that?
I couldn't agree more.
Okay.
Really.
Yara? You?
Yeah.
Yes, I know you do.
Yeah, no, that's just one thing that you made me think of, apart from the very relatable example. My 5 years old is as well in the same space at the moment. But no, you reminded me of a conversation I had with someone from the industry that probably some of you know. It was Danilo Monaco. I was talking to him. He's quite experienced, and he's been a coach for a while and all that. And we were talking about firing people. That was a very general conversation. And this had, we very often get focused on how the people who get fired will react. And we worry a lot about the communication we do towards them. But we rarely make sure and worry about the communication we offer to the people who are staying. And I think that the risk with giving people time and, this balance, of course, it's very difficult, and it's all very theoretical, right, and very ideal word. But I think we should also be careful not falling into the trap of spending all our energy going after the people who are resisting change. Because then, in the end, it's business. Business is made of people, and the human side is definitely part of it. So I'm not saying, somebody's reluctant. Let's just forget about them. But let's just remember that the people who are accepting change and the people who are going the extra mile to support the company in a difficult moment are as valuable as the ones who are being resistant. So I think that's also something that is maybe rarely touched on and that we need to take into account.
Yeah, I totally agree, but I have a question as a human resources person, right? The tricky thing is how you get to the moment to fire that people. If you had, like Nikki said, your strategic plan to accompany the change in your teams, and you prepare and you give feedback and make, we're going to talk about that in a few minutes, but a training program to accompany the development of these teams. And one person is not like following the plan, right? Yeah. You can give them 1 chance, 2 chance, 3 chance for how many are you going to give them? Business is business. I remember your phrase, business is business, in our talk before that. But if you prepare the team and you accompany the team and that person received previous feedback about that, you're not getting goals. And we need to take the decision because the change, we can stop the change, right? When you have to fire them, I am the one that fired people at the company. I have to say that. I want the one that have that conversations, that difficult conversation. it's not a surprise for the person. And you were talking a lot during, I don't know, month or a year about that. So how you get to that final conversation and how you prepare your team for that moment, I think that it's key. But if you didn't do the previous job to help your team to improve, and you only go there and there, okay, you're fine, you're not adapting. Okay, that's what nobody here wants to hear, right?
No, but that was exactly, I mean, I started from firing, but the two conversations were really disconnected. So he was telling, when I talked to Danilo, he was telling me about a story when he had to fire someone and he had that kind of experience. And then the learning I took from that is that everybody is as valuable as any other colleagues within the company. And that's typical. Also, I don't know how it is in your countries, but I remember that from Italian school as well. I was a very good student. I wasn't studying much, but I've always been quite a quick learner, so it was very easy for me to get to things. And I always felt everything was slowing down and down and down and down to support the others. And at a point, I felt unsupported.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I
And
think
it's
that's...
frustrating.
It's frustrating,
Yeah.
exactly. And it's also frustrating, I mean, then you risk to lose that
Double
talent.
yeah.
So it's very difficult,
yes.
and
And
I'm
it's
not
worse.
coming from a company that fires people at all. We've never fired anybody, which I'm not sure is positive, but it's what it is, right? But yeah, I think that's something we need to take into account.
No, I totally. In Latin America, it's the same. In schools and everything is the same. Like you need to like high the bar, right? Not put all the team down, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, my next question is for Luz. Let's move to the other question. Luz, do you know examples of best practices to foster collaboration between us humans and AI systems within multicultural teams?
Yes, I would say the best practice is always to test, not to embrace AI blindly because it's the trend, because we don't want to be left out. It has to make sense for our team, for our project. Also, everyone knows each different project has different clients, different platforms. Perhaps a specific tool doesn't work for it all. We have to test. We have to see if it makes sense, if we can streamline it into the work. I would say, as Johan said, let's calm down. Yes, we want to embrace AI, but it has to make sense within reason. So that would be one of the advice I want to share.
Thanks, Luz.
Test.
Test, always test. Well, but the important thing is, as they say, we are living like in a moment that the learning model is changing. If you see the graph, you can see that we are changing from learning in the flow of work to learning everywhere. And I think that it's something that the new generation knows. And I don't know in your companies, but in Terra we have a lot of young talent. And if you went to the presentation of Marina and Angie, you could see our youngest team, I think, in action. But I think that it's important to promote, to empower them, to be part for the solution that we are looking for regarding to technology. And considering that they can learn everywhere, all the time. They have in the social media or even in the net, in books, we know that different people wants to learn from different sources, right? But they have everything here. So sometimes we don't need to program like a very strict ordered training program in our company, if not provide the environment from them to share the knowledge and to build collaborative knowledge. That's why I recommend you, if you don't have one in your company, to build an internal knowledge center. We have one in Terra, and it's very useful because people that is curious, naturally curious, and faster, they can share the information and simplify it for the other people that maybe is not so tech savvy or they need help. And it's going to be very, they are going to find the best solution together and with less effort. So I think that it's a very useful tool to empower your teams.
That's such a good point, Natty, because you could spend hours of HR resources making a training plan, for a specific context, or putting together a PowerPoint presentation. And these days, the kids can chat GPT, the answers to whatever questions that they have and get the resources in the format that, is best for them. So, yeah, really good point. Okay. So for people management strategies, my first question is for Giada. What strategies can leaders employ to effectively manage and support their teams through periods of significant change and uncertainty, such as the transition to AI processes in the localization industry?
Maybe I've spoiled my answer with the previous comment. Yeah. I've been leading a team for a very short time, so perhaps I'm not like the one who can advise on that. What I'm experiencing is I'm currently like being sort of the umbrella person, if we may say so, for 3 different teams. And when I say different, I mean it. Different in terms of tasks. I have sales, I have vendor management, and I have quality. And salespeople, we all know how they are or tend to be. Vendor management is very operation side. And then quality is mostly linguists. So it's extremely different personalities. And dealing with those extremely different personalities to me it's a huge challenge that I haven't found a solution to yet. I've been trying to learn a lot, so maybe that's something that we should never forget to do, like finding sources to learn, finding your own way of learning and understanding that people may have different ways of learning. I tend to learn a lot from contacts with other people. I think I've quoted conversations with different people throughout the entire panel, so that says a lot about it. And that's what I like. And if I have somebody in a team that has that same attitude, maybe encourage their contact with the people, be the support, be the linking ring to connect them with others. Perhaps those of us who go to conferences, for example, we have much better exposure to the industry than other people. So it's also important to bring the information back and maybe try to make it somehow digestible for the people you are working with. And at the same time, encourage everybody to find their own way of learning. So that goes to what Johan was saying. Support them, understand if people need some more time, but maybe not too long. Make it also clear that there are priorities and there are things that we need to do, because the alternative is that we're not paying our bills in the end. So yeah, that I think might be one.
Thank you, Giada. So we're running a little short on time, so Luz, if you can answer quickly. How can organizations foster a culture of transparency, trust, and open communication to address employees' concerns and fears about AI adoption and its potential impact on their roles?
The answer is quick and easy. How can companies be transparent? Just be transparent. If you don't know where you are going with AI, tell that to your team, because they may be thinking, why are we implementing this? Are they going to fire me? Am I going to be redundant? No, we don't know. Okay, well, we don't know, but we're trying it, okay? And let's think about one thing. AI is advertised towards managers and people who buy it. And our teams see that. See, you will save money, you will save time, you will save workers. So that's how our colleagues, our teams fear. If they saw you will stop doing the mass emailing, you will stop. You will only do the creative part, the meaningful part, the human part. Then maybe they would fear less. So we have to transmit that. Hey, don't worry, we love you, we need you. Your human expertise is needed. So be transparent. We don't know what we're doing, but you are in the team, so let's do it together. Let's find out here.
Thank you, Liz. Yeah, no, I won't go into this in the interest of time, but I think the one thing that we haven't touched upon yet is the celebrate piece, and that's just what Luz says, like, celebrate where you're at, and celebrate the people that are championing it, and celebrate the people that are learning it. So empower and celebrate kind of go hand in hand, but we'll just move on to our last question.
Our last topic, cultural consideration. I think that, Giada, you answered the question, but I'm going to ask Johan about that. Johan, please tell me, how do you consider cultural difference influence the way teams perceive and respond to AI technologies, and what implication does this have for leadership?
Unfortunately, I think for leaders and people management and project management, the news is it's going to get a lot more difficult for people. So, as I said, this is not. It might seem doom and gloom, but it's not. In Africa, there's 54 countries. If you don't know it, there's 2,000 plus languages, thousands of cultural groupings, and for AI or against AI, it's just going to be for leaders and so on in Africa. It's just going to be added to the sometimes overwhelming, crippling set of things that people have to deal with. I've been in the industry now, this year is 20 years that I'm there, and I actually wrote it down, every single issue that I could remember that I've dealt with over the years, and AI is now just going to be added to that. So we've got race, religion, gender, country resources, violence, war, internet bandwidth, cost, famine, water, potential to study, universities, and I can go on, etc., etc., etc. So it might seem that stepping back, it might seem that I'm too scared to now add AI to that as well. But for leaders, it doesn't have to be crippling. And I think, which I like, is we might not discuss it potentially, specifically beforehand, but all of this, and in my experience, to listen to your people is absolutely the most important. In engaging with them, be open to engagement. Don't have it just be a token question, what do you think, and so on, and then give the answer, and well, okay, file it back or delete the question and so on. And I've been surprised many times over my career is how easy people tell you what they need if you just ask them. And Marina and Angie had the talk about DEI having that policy and so on, and we had a new translator that worked with us, and I followed some posts of her. She's very sort of inclusive and so on her Instagram and everything, and I was very fearful of how do I engage, and am I going to say the wrong thing and so on. And she just came back to me and said, just ask me. Just if you're unsure, just ask me. And I'll tell you, and I won't mind it because you didn't know. So listen, people will tell you what motivates you, and you might actually find, and I've found it, you might actually find the answers a lot quicker and easier and right there in front of you. Just engage.
Thank you, Johan. Well, we want to leave time for questions, but we are going to close with this concept. That, you are seeing the country mapping tool for any mayor there in action. It's a good tool if you want to try, if you work with multicultural teams, to understand how they communicate, how they relate. This is like a general, right, tool. As Johan said, then you have to listen to your own people, because each person is different, we know that. And you can build your own map of your company with other tools, maybe tailor-made for your company. But it is a general tool that is important when you work in global and multicultural environments. But I want to close this topic saying that, highlighting the importance of inclusivity in our works. And we have to try that all our people is here, that their voices count, and they feel value and included in our processes when we talk about change management. And as they said, each person is different, and they have their times, but of course we're a business, and we have to be aligned with our strategic goals, but we have to be sure that we consider all the dimensions that in cultural environment and an inclusive environment needs to work. So Nikki, we are not going to detail that, but...
Yeah, so we gave, I think, Ellen so graciously passed out bookmarks that encompass all of this, so I'm not going to go into it, but I hope that we've taken an hour of your time to, potentially give you some antidotes to our initial question is, are you preparing your teams to embrace the changes, or are we going to succumb to fear because we don't have strategies in place to help, our people, our teams, our leadership, and our companies through this really potentially stressful time. So thank you all for being a part of our panel discussion, and we'll open up for Q&A. And actually, we have book giveaways to the first 3 Q&A askers. So this to support our topic. So they're all cultural or leadership management. Yeah. Okay, Dominika.
I don't know who wants to answer that, but we were talking about people that resist change within the organization, company. There are always going to be people who resist change, and it's natural for a human being to resist change on some level, right? So, but of course, I know we want people who will be change champions and excited about the change. I want that too in my team, but do you think, is there a place for people resistant to change in our companies, a good place, a good type of job, task? What's your take on that? Because there's a lot of people who's resisting change, and I do think they have other values, other skills, other capacities we can use.
Luz, do you want that?
I would say it depends on this person's personality. I personally feel I'm very resistant to change, but I'm good at other things. So I would meet the person and see where they fit. There's certainly places for everyone, I believe.
As a psychologist, I want to say that you have to analyze the root of this resistance. Why are they resistant to the change? And maybe you can find a way to promote the change, maybe with other times or working with other people or with other teams, and try to preserve your talent. But I agree with the other. And if you need to take a hard decision, sometimes you have to do that. But first, you have to prove anything to help that person to change and to accompany your company goals.
I think different jobs have different change thresholds naturally, right? Like an accountant or quality manager might be less change savvy, right? But a tech person, because they're used to constant change, or a project manager is going to be more quicker to adapt. So sorry, there's another question over here.
How do you manage the expectations of your leadership team? So I work in an in-house translation team at a retailer. I'm being encouraged to look at tech, and I'm asking for more people, and they're clearly not seeing the alignment, and they are seeing clear ways of having savings and potentially reducing my team. So how do you go approach, because as you said, AI is being sold as it'll save you money, so how do you go about approaching them about that, and that it's an and, not an or, basically?
Okay, I'm not sure I followed. Do you mean that you getting the pressure from the top to deliver?
Yeah, so with the, so we've asked for tools. They said, yes, go and get the tools, but then at the same time we're going, our work's increasing, potentially we need more people, but they're kind of going, and we've got a balance of some people on contract, some people perm, and we're going, we want to make people on contract permanent. They're going, no, we want to see what happens when you get the tools. We're going, but I need more people than I'm already. They're definitely seeing it as a way of saving money rather than, these tools.
I think, unfortunately, the answer is sometimes the only way to have those people that insist on it is, and I've experienced that, is to, and that's almost frightening to do, is letting them see this is going to fail, and and here we're talking about people. So people might lose their jobs, and I think in Amazon and many people have lost their jobs, and now the leaders see, oh shit, there's 2,000 people that I laid off, but it's not working. I can't fix it. AI isn't doing that, so I must immediately hire new people. So unfortunately, and it's bad to say, it's have them see what the decisions entail and what the results are. Sometimes I had and I told them I had a friend who was sitting at a major thing, and their tech coordinator or leader in a completely different country called them in, and sort of 100 people called them in and said, okay, you're fired, you stay, you're fired, you stay, and so on. And then he was sort of devastated because he felt for his people, his friends who were fired, and he was safe. And then he said they went through this amazing turmoil, and people were crying outside and so on. And a week later, the leaders said, we decided the terminology team is actually quite important for AI, so will you come back? So it's difficult. I don't know how to answer your question. Sometimes you have to go through the process of wanting to go from contract to permanent, and then letting them see it's not going to work. And it's bad because sometimes you have to then try and figure out how to get the broken glass back again. So it might be a good answer, but sometimes it's what needed.
If I may add just one more thing to that, maybe an intermediate step could be gathering data. Because, of course, it's easier to ask for something if you have clear data proving you actually do need a person. Because the question there might generally be, okay, why do you need more people? So maybe, probably that's obvious, but I thought it would be worth mentioning.
And even use cases, right? Like talk to other companies or see who has had similar situations where maybe you can bring that to your management team and say, well, let me talk to you about an example when this really didn't work. So can we try to avoid this outcome with this data, like Giada mentioned, you know? So so that we don't have to get to the place where I'm gonna have to prove it to you, you know?
And that thing of the case studies is sometimes the leaders or the people who ask it just don't know. They were speaking to a friend, and the friend said, oh, I saved $5 trillion by doing this, and he said, oh, I'm going to do it at my company. And sometimes I like the use case study is just saying to them, this might not work for X, Y, Z reasons. It might just be ignorance. The leaders just don't know what's going on.
Yeah, and don't be afraid to ask the dumb questions. I ask dumb questions all the time, but it's what gets the conversation started. And I ask dumb questions of people that I think, you know, are so much greater than me and do greater things, because those are the people that I need to learn from, so that I don't put my people in sticky situations. You know. Oh, go ahead.
I'm gonna go very quickly, but I just wanted to sort of link to the change, the resisting the change piece. And I'm curious if any of you have had the experience of a situation where change has to happen, and that's fine, right? It's inevitable. And I think sometimes you may have found, and I'm curious, people that are not necessarily resistant to change, but are a little shell-shocked by it and don't feel supported in making the changes. Because I think it's also very important to understand that sometimes someone may just totally be on board, but also we cannot expect people to become something overnight, and we cannot expect people who, like you were saying, Giada, maybe aren't used to gathering data to all of a sudden become a data expert. So I think, what are you doing on your side to also give them the tools and the opportunities to make those changes. So I'm just curious if anybody wants to chime in, or if anybody has seen it or lived it. I have lived it, I think, from the part of the person having to change, and I love change and I thrive in it. But I also sometimes in the past, didn't feel supported in making those changes.
I'll take that because I could see
Mm.
my two
You are
teammates
living the-
laughing there. Because that's exactly where we are at the moment. And I don't have the answer to the question because I'm there, but I don't know what to do really. So it's definitely a problem. I think that willingness to change is a starting point. At least, the person wants to get there. One thing that I've been advised to do, and I'm in the process side and if it works or not, is splitting the big challenge into smaller challenges. And so helping the person with short-term deadlines and simple tasks and seeing if they can stay on top of things. But yeah, that's where we are. So maybe next year gala, I can tell you. Let's catch up in 6 months or so.
No, I like the idea of milestones, right? Also, like for a big project.
Yeah, AI can help. AI can help the most non-technical user understand how to break down technical problems.
Sometimes
You can
it
become
is
a data
tools,
expert.
right?
Yeah.
And
Champion squad.
I want to add that sometimes you have to find in your organization that informal leaders that can support the other ones and can like promote the change, and you can put that person working together like in tandem with these people and try to promote maybe at the same level of the organization, right? Because sometimes they feel that they are not being supported by the managers, the high management, but you have other leaders that move the needle in your organization. So identify them.
Allies, right? Finding allies.
Yes.
in your champion.
It's powerful, or not?
Absolutely, yeah.
I think that one last question.
A quick one. Speaking of changes, have you seen the HR department making changes to the profiles when hiring people to make sure that you are hiring people prepared for this type of changes?
Do you want to ask?
for you, maybe.
That for me?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think so.
Yes, I think that we are trying to find in the market people. I think that maybe you are not going to find the perfect match when you look for technical capabilities, but you have to find that person that have the attitude to learn, the continuous learning attitude and the curiosity to learn and the abilities to research what you need. So as a psychologist, I think that it's more important to find the right attitude and capabilities in the base than the technical abilities. But these are the ones that are easier to learn, right? But the attitude is what you can change sometimes. So we are trying to open our eyes and use powerful tools to do psychotechnicals and these kind of things that the psychologists do, and tests and cases, analysis, these kinds of things to find the right people with the right attitude for the job.
Thank
I
you.
don't know
I think our time is up. Right? So, thank you, everyone.